Here's the problem. For the last month, we've had progressives bellyaching about how biased Judge Cannon is because she's a Trump appointee and they don't like some of her rulings, even though she hasn't dismissed the case. She was given a motion by the Trump team to dismiss the case. She did not dismiss the case. But yet she's biased towards Trump because some of her rulings favor the defense. We've had lots of bellyaching about Sam Alito and an upside-down flag his wife flew, in addition to the appeal to heaven flag, which was not controversial until 3 seconds ago when they needed it to be. But they don't think it's a problem at all on the left that the judge in the Trump trial gave $35 to a fund earmarked for, and I quote, "stop Trump and his right-wing legacy." Now, their defense is, well, it was only $35. And that's actually more damning, because if you know anything about federal election law, when you give less than $250, particularly when you give less than $100, it's just included in the general fund. It's not itemized. He wanted to virtue signal and have it made public that he was giving money to stop Trump and his right-wing legacy. He didn't want to give a substantial amount, just enough for it to be known that he was committed to stopping Trump and his right-wing legacy, and then refused to recuse himself. And so then they're like, well, a group of ethics experts said he didn't have to recuse himself. So you're telling me the entire system is plagued with left-wing hacks. That's how bad it is for Donald Trump. That not only did he not think he needed to recuse himself, but the people above him said, oh no, you can give money to a fund called Stop Trump and His Right-Wing Legacy, and you can still oversee the prosecution of Donald Trump. That's how screwed up this is. They're upset about flags and Judge Cannon giving Trump some favorable rulings while not throwing out his case, and they don't have a problem with this. That's how politicized this whole thing is. And on top of that, they did not have to clarify the charges about Trump until their closing statement, which they should have done before the case even began, because essentially you put the Trump defense team having to deal with multiple theories of the case as opposed to a comprehensive theory of the case, which defendants are supposed to know the charges beforehand. And on top of that, you've decided to charge him with something bound to a federal campaign finance law. The federal government itself didn't find a violation of it. The federal government itself says only the feds can prosecute it. And yet you use that to build an underlying crime to extend a case's statute of limitations in a way that literally in the entire history of our republic, no state has ever done. You custom cultivated charges specifically for Donald Trump with a prosecutor who campaigned on stopping Donald Trump. Now, to that point, there's a lot of revisionist history out there right now. I got to play you. Look, Donna Brazile is a friend of mine. I like Donna Brazile. I disagree with Donna Brazile pretty tremendously on this point.
You know, George, the spin is getting quite old.
It's not spin.
The spin is getting quite old. Let's attack the legal system. Let's attack the jury. Let's attack the judge. Let's do everything but show remorse, contrition. That's why Donald Trump was also held liable for defamation, accused of sexual assault. And that's why he still has 54 convictions that he must get through. But I agree with one thing. The verdict will be rendered by the voters in November in 157 days. But to have the presumptive nominee of one major political party facing jail time or facing probation, whatever it may be, whatever the judge may decide, it's a huge deal. And this is not the place for spin. And, you know, I want to say one thing about Mr. Bragg. Mr. Bragg was reluctant until he saw the facts.
All right, we can stop right there because that's not actually true. This is the New York Times, all the way back June 2nd, 2021. June 2nd, 2021. This is what the New York Times had to say. One of the most prominent of the New York DA lawsuits filed in June of 2018 accused the Donald Trump Foundation and the Trump family of using a, quote, shocking pattern of illegality, and ultimately led to the foundation's dissolution. Mr. Bragg at a Democratic candidate forum in December of 2020 cited that lawsuit as one reason he was qualified to oversee the case against Donald Trump. Quote, I have investigated Trump and his children and held them accountable for their misconduct with the Trump Foundation. I know how to follow the facts and hold people in power accountable. And then there's this from the New York Times, quote, Mr. Bragg acknowledged that Mr. Trump could seek to make an issue of his history if he wins. Asked how he would contend with accusations of bias from the former president, Mr. Bragg said he's been attentive to what he said publicly and what he had not said. It is a fact I have sued Trump more than 100 times. I can't change that fact, nor would I. That was important work. That's separate from anything the DA's office may be looking at now. So he's been very careful not to tip his hand too much in public to be accused of bias. Really. That's it, y'all. That's it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So Alvin Bragg campaigned on getting Donald Trump. They're revising it now, by the way, because they want to take out one of the avenues of appeal. But Alvin Bragg campaigned on it. Y'all, you remember the whole saying Americans commit 3 crimes a day? Can you imagine you have a district attorney who pursues you relentlessly? You campaigns on, I'm going to target you, Joe Smith. If I get elected, Joe Smith has me to worry about. I know how to deal with Joe Smith. So, yes, he gets into office and he prosecutes Joe Smith and goes on a fishing expedition to find the crime he can tie to Joe Smith. And what's the best he can do? To come up with a novel legal theory never before in the history of this republic used, string it all together in ways that's never been done in the history of this republic, customly curating a crime to go after Joe Smith. And here's the thing, in a way that his city never does, because New York rarely prosecutes these documentary fraud claims. And you should note that their theory of the case was that Donald Trump paid off Stormy Daniels in 2017 as a fraud for the 2016 election. And who is the victim in this crime? The American public, they claim, because we didn't get to know about him paying off the porn star in 2016, that he didn't pay off until 2017. That's their theory. That's what the jury bought. And by the way, I'm not going to blame the jury here. I know there are a lot of people who want to, and yes, it's a bunch of Manhattan progressives who did this, but there was no way they could have avoided coming to this the way the judge at the end stacked the deck. And let's get back to the judge. This is a judge who gave money to a fund earmarked for, and again, I quote, stop Trump and his right-wing legacy. For weeks, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the rest of the media have given serious consideration to Sam Alito's appearance of impropriety because his wife flew an upside-down American flag that at the time was considered by the Washington Post just an act of neighborly disagreement. But now, because Sam Alito has a case before him involving January 6th, is suddenly an appearance of impropriety and bias against him. And he should recuse himself because of the appearance of that impropriety, the appearance of a conflict of interest. And then they flew the appeal to heaven flag, which until last week flew in front of San Francisco City Hall. Did you know this? The flag, the appeal to heaven flag, was flying in front of the San Francisco City Hall until last week when they took it down because it is suddenly now controversial. Only controversial because Sam Alito flew it at his vacation house. They're upset about that, but this judge gave money to a Stop Trump and his right-wing legacy fund, and they're like, that's not a conflict of interest. That's not an impropriety. The ethics expert said he could stay. You know, the same damn experts who said the Supreme Court was going to agree with Colorado and keep Donald Trump off the ballot until 9-0, they didn't. And what did those experts say? Well, clearly the Supreme Court is in the pocket of Donald Trump. Yeah, Sotomayor, Jackson Brown, all of them, Kagan, yes, in Donald Trump's pocket. And then there's Aileen Cannon. Oh, she's given favorable rulings to the defense. It means she's in his pocket. After all, he put her on the court. You know, Donald Trump put Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and they rejected his election challenges. In fact, a dozen Trump-appointed judges have rejected his stolen election challenges. And yet somehow you would think, based on their logic, that clearly they would throw the election to him because they were taking the cases, except they didn't. Because once you're an appointed judge to the federal courts, you have a lifetime tenure, and Donald Trump can't remove you. You owe him nothing. which they've always maintained until poor Judge Cannon made a favorable ruling but chose not to throw his case out, rejected the argument of throwing out this documents case. But somehow they can question her, they can question Sam Alito, but don't you dare question Alvin Bragg or the judge in New York who gave money to a fund earmarked for, quote, stop Trump and his right-wing legacy. But it was perfectly fine for him to oversee the trial. Don't ask questions. You're undermining democracy if you question him. You can only question Judge Cannon and Sam Alito. You can't question this judge who gave money to a fund entitled, quote, stop Trump and his right-wing legacy. And Alvin Bragg, who campaigned on prosecuting Donald Trump, who made it a central part of, if you elect me, I will prosecute Donald Trump. And now they're like, oh, he was reluctant to prosecute Donald Trump. This is Orwellian in its revisionism. There's a way for the GOP to move forward here. And that's very simple. Point this out repeatedly. Every time, every single time you get up there, point out that the judge gave money to a Stop Trump and his right-wing legacy fund. And when they say, well, it was only $35, you say, yeah, and that's the point. He only gave them $35, but he wanted it known he was committed to stopping Trump and his right-wing legacy. You people are upset about a flag at Sam Alito's house, and you don't think this is a problem? You're biased. Here's Will Scharf from Missouri, who is on the legal defense team, talking about their next steps.
On Thursday, you praised the jury. You said that they were considering the law and the evidence seriously, and you predicted a just verdict. Do you accept their decision now?
No, I think when you look at the jury instructions here, Judge Merchan essentially, I wouldn't say rigged the deliberations, but certainly steered the jury towards the verdict that he clearly wanted. We're going to be challenging Judge Merchan's failure to recuse on appeal. I think it constitutes a clear due process violation. We're obviously going to be challenging aspects of the jury instructions themselves as well. I think there's a lot of appellate material there.
That's quite a change for you. Before the verdict came out, you said that the jury instructions are quite favorable to your side. So when you think they're going your way, the instructions are favorable. When the jury rules against you, the judge made a mistake?
I think hope for the best, plan for the worst, George. But I think when you look at the totality of the circumstances in this case, this is a prosecution that should have never been brought. This was a case tried in front of a judge who clearly should have recused. I think we have a lot of fair complaints with the way that this trial was conducted.
Notice how George Stephanopoulos just seems so giddy to, oh, we got him. In fact, everybody in the media seems very giddy. Oh, we can refer to him now as convicted felon. You can, which emphasizes just how political this case was. And the Republicans can neutralize this. The fact of the matter is, this is June 3rd. This case came out the last week of May. We still have a debate between Trump and Biden. We still have the conventions. There's another debate. There's still the economic news. There's still the international chaos. I don't think this verdict is going to rock the apple cart as much as the Democrats think. And I think the more the Democrats play it up as convicted felon Trump, it just emphasizes that they set this up to make this happen. It's dirty pool, and Americans don't like dirty pool. The judge in this case gave money to a fund designated Stop Trump and his right-wing legacy. It's clearly part of a political pattern by the Democrats to use lawfare to stop Donald Trump. And if the Republicans remind people of that fact, that the judge gave money for that fact and refused to recuse himself, and the Democrats have been making hay over Sam Alito's flag, they've got a way to show people exactly how partisan this whole thing was.